It is 2:30 in the morning, March 9th, 1892. Memphis, Tennessee. The streets are dark. The air is still. 75 men in black masks move through the darkness toward the Shelby County Jail. They carry weapons. They have a plan. They force the jailer aside and drag 3 men from their cells into the night. A mailman, a store clerk, a grocer, all black. Their crime was not violence. It was not theft. Their crime was running a grocery store that outsold the white one across the street. By sunrise, all 3 are gone, taken to a field by the railroad tracks, silenced forever. No one is arrested. No one is charged. But one woman refuses to let this disappear. She is 29 years old. She writes for a small black newspaper in this city. She sets out to investigate not just this one case, but every act of mob violence across the South. She wants proof. She wants data. What she finds will become the nation's darkest open secret, and for telling the truth, they will burn her entire newspaper down. Her name was Ida Bell Wells, born on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Born into enslavement, she was freed as an infant by the Emancipation Proclamation. But in Mississippi, freedom did not come with safety, not even close. In 1878, a yellow fever epidemic swept the South. It reached Holly Springs. Ida was just 16 years old. The fever took both her parents and her baby brother in the same week. In a matter of days, she was alone with 5 siblings. Most 16-year-olds would have collapsed under that weight. Ida did not. She lied about her age and became a school teacher. She raised her brothers and sisters by herself, teaching during the week, doing laundry on weekends. Every dollar went to family. In 1881, she moved to Memphis with 2 of her sisters. She kept teaching. She kept surviving. She kept pushing. Then, on September 15th, 1883, something happened on a train that would shape the rest of her entire life. Ida held a first-class ticket for the ladies' car. The conductor told her to move to the smoking car, the car for black riders. She refused. When the conductor grabbed her, she fought back. It took 3 grown men to physically remove her from that train. She sued the railroad and won $500. 1883. 72 years before Rosa Parks. Let that sink in. But the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned the ruling in 1887. The message was clear. Justice was not for her. That moment changed something in Ida. The courtroom would not protect her people, so she turned to the power of the printed word. She began writing under the pen name Iola, sharp, fearless columns about inequality in Memphis schools. The city was not ready. In 1891, she was fired from teaching for exposing the poor conditions in schools for black children across Memphis. She did not stop. She became co-owner and editor of the Memphis Free Speech, one of 200 black-owned papers in America. The Free Speech grew fast. Ida was direct, confrontational, and bold. She printed truths no one else in the city dared to say. Memphis, in 1892, was the 5th largest grocery market in America. The economy was strong, but tensions were rising. This was Jim Crow, Tennessee. Black and white worlds ran side by side, separate and unequal, held in place by the threat of harm. Across the South, mob violence had become a tool of terror. Public spectacles meant to frighten, photos of victims sold openly. In that single year, more than 230 people were subjected to mob violence in America. Most of them were black. White newspapers had a simple story. They called the victims criminals, predators. They said the violence was necessary and just. In Memphis, there was a neighborhood called The Curve. a mixed-race area on the edge of town. This is where the story begins. Thomas Moss was a letter carrier by day and a grocer by night. He co-owned a store called the People's Grocery with two partners. Moss was one of Ida's closest friends. She was godmother to his daughter. They shared meals and a vision for a better community. The People's Grocery was thriving, a cooperative owned by 11 Black investors. Families came from all across the neighborhood. Across the street sat a white-owned store run by a man named William Barrett. He was watching his customers disappear one by one. Barrett did not compete. He retaliated, he provoked confrontations, he used the local authorities to target the Black store owners. When Black men defended their store from a white mob, police arrested the defenders. Not the attackers, the defenders. Let that sit. Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart were jailed. The charge was wounding white men who had come to destroy their store. Their attorney told them to be patient. The system would sort it out. A trial would come. Justice would be served. It never would. Which brings us back to that same night. March 9th, 2:30 in the morning. 75 masked men outside the county jail. They overpowered the jailer. They knew exactly which cells to go to. They knew the names. This was not chaos. It was organized. Moss, McDowell, and Stewart were pulled from their cells and taken to a field near the railroad tracks, 1 mile north of town. Calvin McDowell was struck repeatedly. His wounds were so severe that details appeared in the white newspapers the following day. Will Stewart met the same fate. He was 26 years old. His only act had been helping to run a grocery store in his own area. Thomas Moss, the mailman and father, the man Ida called her friend, was the last of the three. He knew what was coming for him. Before the end, Moss spoke his final words. "Tell my people to go west. There is no justice for them here." And then he was gone. A mailman, a grocer, a clerk. 3 men who believed in something as ordinary as owning a business. That belief cost everything. The coroner listed the responsible parties as persons unknown. No arrests followed, no investigation was opened, no one was held. White newspapers in Memphis did not condemn what happened. Some of them praised it. The message to Black residents was very clear. Ida read the news and felt something break inside of her. Thomas Moss was her friend. His daughter was her goddaughter. He was gone. She later wrote that this opened her eyes. Mob violence was never about justice. It was about removing those who gained any wealth. Something shifted in Ida that week. The grief did not break her. It sharpened her. She picked up her pen and began her life's work. In the Free Speech, she urged Black residents to leave Memphis. She wrote that this city would never protect their lives or rights. More than 6,000 Black residents left Memphis. They took their labor, their savings, and their families to the Western lands. White business owners felt the impact fast. Streetcar companies reported that Black riders had disappeared. The economy took a hit, but Ida was not done. She stopped grieving and started counting. She documented every case of mob violence she could find on record. She went across the South. She spoke with witnesses, families, and officials. She gathered data on over 700 known cases. What she found tore apart the story white America had been telling itself for decades. The entire justification was built on a lie. Roughly 1/4 of victims were even accused of assault. The rest were targeted for arguing, competing, or being too successful. In May 1892, Ida published the editorial that ended her life in Memphis. She printed what no one else dared to say. She called the claim that Black men assaulted white women the old threadbare lie. She wrote that no one in the South believed it. White Memphis erupted. The editor of the Memphis Commercial, Edward Carmack, attacked her in print with language too vile to quote. Other white papers demanded retaliation. One suggested she should be physically harmed. Threats poured in from across the region. On May 27, 1892, while Ida was in New York, a mob forced its way into the Free Speech office in Memphis. They destroyed the printing press. They ripped apart every copy they could find. They gutted the entire office. Nothing was spared. They left a message. If Ida B. Wells ever returned to Memphis, she would meet the same fate as the three men at the railroad tracks. Not a single copy of the Memphis Free Speech survives today. Like dozens of other black papers from that era, it was fully destroyed. Edward Carmack, the editor who helped incite the attack, was never held to account. He went on to serve as a United States Senator. Ida B. Wells was now living in exile. She could not return to Memphis. She would not set foot in the South for 30 more years. She changed her pen name. She was no longer Iola. She called herself Exiled. That single word carried everything she had been through. They wrecked her press. They drove her from the city. They took her home, her work, and her safety, all because she printed the truth. They believed they had silenced her, a woman with no press, no city, no protection. What could she possibly do now? They were sure they were wrong. Completely, permanently wrong. Ida B. Wells was only getting started, and the whole world was about to hear her voice. In New York, an editor named T. Thomas Fortune gave her a platform at the New York Age. He, too, had once been held in enslavement. In June 1892, she published a full investigation into mob violence. For the first time, it reached a national audience. That October, she released Southern Horrors. It was the first documented record of racial mob violence ever assembled in the country. She moved to Chicago. She married attorney Ferdinand Barnett and kept her own last name, one of the first American women to do that. In 1895, she published A Red Record, 100 pages of data, names, and causes. The first study of its kind ever. From 1882 to 1968, nearly 5,000 people were subjected to mob violence. Most of them were black. In 1894, she crossed the Atlantic. She spoke in England, Scotland, and Wales. She said what America refused to hear. The British formed the first international committee against this violence. Pressure on the United States began building from abroad. In 1909, she helped found the organization that would lead the civil rights movement for the next 100 years. A founder. In 1913, at a suffrage march in the Capitol, she was told to walk in the back of the line. The reason was her skin color. She refused. She stepped into the Illinois group and marched at the front. That act of defiance told the world exactly who she was. She took her campaign to the White House itself. She demanded federal action from the president. She did not ask politely, she pushed. Over the decades, more than 200 bills against mob violence were introduced in Congress. Not a single one of them became law. Ida B. Wells Barnett passed away in Chicago on March 25, 1931. She was 68. The fight was unfinished. Then came something quieter than violence, but just as damaging. America forgot her. Her name slowly vanished from the history books. Rosa Parks became the icon. The organization Ida helped build became famous, but the woman who started it all faded into a footnote. For decades, she was uncredited and unnamed, erased from public memory as completely as her newspaper had been erased from that office. But truth has a way of outlasting those who try to bury it. It just takes longer than it should. Sometimes it takes almost a century. In 2018, the New York Times wrote a belated obituary for Ida. They said she pioneered techniques still used in reporting. That same year, a national memorial opened in Alabama. It honored thousands of victims of mob violence. Ida's story was part of it. In 2019, Chicago renamed a major road Ida B. Wells Drive. Her name now marks the streets of the city she called her home. In 2021, a 35-foot bronze monument rose in Chicago. It was the first statue in the city honoring a Black woman. In 2020, 89 years after her passing, Ida B. Wells received a Pulitzer Prize. 89 years. Say that out loud. The citation honored her courageous reporting on the horrific violence against Black Americans during one of the darkest chapters ever. 89 years. That is how long it took for America to formally recognize what a 29-year-old woman with a pen had done. 130 years. That is how long it took for a federal law against mob violence to pass, signed in 2022. In 2025, her face appeared on the quarter. The woman they tried to erase now sits in every pocket across this country. Ida B. Wells proved what nobody wanted to hear. Mob violence was never about justice. It was about power, about fear, and about money. She proved that one person with a press and the courage to print the truth could take on the lies of an entire nation. And she did. But the cost was everything. Her home, her paper, her city, her safety. She gave all of it up because staying silent was not an option. How many voices like hers are still buried? How many names have we never learned? How many truths are still waiting to be uncovered? A 29-year-old teacher picked up a pen and refused to stop writing. They burned her press. They could not burn what she said. If you know of a forgotten figure from American history, drop their name in the comments. These stories need to be found and told. If this one stayed with you, hit subscribe and the bell. We cover stories like this every single week. There is so much more to come. Next week, we head to a new state with another story buried for too long. Trust me on this one. You are not going to want to miss it. Share this with someone who should hear it. Ida spent her life making sure stories like this reached as many people as she could find. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth does not vanish just because someone destroys the press. It never has, and it never will.